Tanse relatives, and welcome back to Muskeg Tea with Chantel G, where we gather stories, sip truth, and honor the medicines of conversation. I'm your host, Chantel Gladue, coming to you from Treaty 6 territory. Today's episode is one that holds a lot of heart and hope. We're sitting down with the CEO and founder of Okisikow Iskwew Center, or Oki, a new youth treatment center located in Frog Lake First Nation. Oki is doing something powerful, offering young people ages 14 to 24 a place to heal from addiction, trauma, and suicide, all through an Indigenous land-based lens. In this conversation, we'll talk about the roots of Oki, what land-based healing really means, and why culture is medicine. We'll also hear about the challenges, the triumphs, and the deep transformation that comes with this kind of work. So pour yourself a cup of tea, settle in, and let's hold space together for this story. This is one for the youth, the healers, and for the ones still finding their way home. So welcome, Marcel. Can you please introduce yourself and share a bit of your journey? What brought you to this role at the Okisikow Iskwew Center?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Marcel Desjarlais. I'm from Frog Lake First Nation, but I grew up in the East Prairie Métis settlement up here in Treaty 8. I grew up here with 8 other siblings here in East Prairie, and my parents raised us on a farm here, raised us with horses and cows and chickens and all the typical things you see on a farm. And it was not without its trouble. My dad went to raise school and my mom went to residential school, and my mushum and cookum actually met in residential school at age 14 and 13. So a lot of that history moves forward with us until we find it's time to break cycles, right? Cycles of abuse and cycles of violence or alcoholism or what have you, are the things that we deal with on the daily. I was a police officer for some time up in northern Alberta for the Lesser Slave Lake Regional Police. And then after I burned out of there, I went home for a while, went to oil and gas. And then I worked for ATCO, which was kind of cool, working with all the First Nations communities. And then we had a bit of a recession, and the economy fell out, and I stayed home here with my parents on the farm for just over a year. And I lived down the road there, and every day I'd be building corrals, or we'd be working on the farm with Dad. He'd take me out medicine picking and show me different medicines. My mom would show me different things. My severance from ATCO was running out, so I kept looking for work. And I found a job in Edmonton, but it meant I had to move. And it was working with youth in group homes and as an Aboriginal liaison. And I think even my name, I think the name of the Aboriginal liaison changed in the term I was there from Aboriginal to Indigenous relations or something like that, trying to be politically correct. And so I started working with youth from ages 5 to about 17. They had a still program for kids that aged out, adults, and they had their own places. So I worked at 6 different group homes, and then I worked in the SIL program. And I found out that I didn't have any credibility with the youth. Although I grew up in culture, I grew up around ceremony. One, I didn't have the language. We lost that in the Roman Catholic school, but I kept trying to learn the language and learn a word every day. But for the youth, it's like they see people, right? They know who's for them, who's not, and they're really protective of their surroundings. And I had no credibility. I really had to work to get my way into their hearts to build trust. And it was a tiring job because I had to go about 6 or 7 different points across the city every week. Lots of driving, lots of teaching, going to ceremonies. And I was surprised. I was very surprised. I had to pick up some youth, one at the group home and one at the youth assessment center or jail. And so I picked them both up when we were going out to the Sundance at Bob Cardinal's place. And I was telling him about the Sundance, and we stopped to eat at McDonald's. I fed the boys. I said, "Oh, it'll be great to go to the Sundance, eh?" And they're like, "What's a Sundance?" I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "Well, what's a Sundance?" I said, "How old are you?" One boy says, "I'm 15." And the other boy, he says, "I'm 16." I said, "You're First Nations, you're First Nations, and you don't know what a Sundance is?" And they said, "No, never." That blew my mind. And so we went to Bob's, and I gave the boys tobacco, and I said, People are going to tell you what to do. They're going to give you a lot of instruction. Just follow the instruction and don't get upset because there's going to be so many people telling you what to do. And then we sat and we got invited to smoke the pipe with the elders. They fed the boys, I don't know, 2 different times while we worked all day. And we got the structure up. And this man came over and he was like wearing a t-shirt and carrying a log over his back like this and walking to the arbor. And he stopped to talk to us and he introduced himself. So he shook the hands, right? And he went on his way. And the boys said, "Who's that?" And I said, "That's the chief of Enoch." And they're like, "A chief? And he works here?" I said, "Well, he's part of the community. He's helping build the lodge." So we finished building the lodge, and then they started carrying the buffalo skull, and the boys were just bewildered. Their eyes were like big, and it really, as good as it felt, it broke my heart that these boys knew nothing about culture. They knew nothing about Sundance. But they dove in head first with me, and they watched the dancers prepare, and they watched the singing and the smudging and the whistles. And it was great, but it was getting late, and so one wanted to go, so we kind of have to leave, right? So I took them back to their group homes, and I said, "I'll pick you up tomorrow, and we'll go out and we'll help and we'll experience the Sundance again. What do you think?" Yeah. They're both happy, and they both went inside, and they went to bed. And so when I pulled up the next day, one of the younger boy is ready to go. So we went to the Sundance, and we finished up the Sundance, and then we went home, and it really helped me to reflect, right? But that wasn't the turning point yet. My brother George phones me a couple of weeks later, and he says, "Hey, bro, Grizz, where are you?" I said, "I'm in the city." And he says, "There's a horse dance out here. You should come check it out. It's at 3 o'clock." And I said, 3 o'clock? And I looked at my watch, and I said, "It's 11 o'clock." And he goes, "See, you got time." I scrambled, and I got 2 of the SIL program youth, one male and one female. They were like 18 and 19. And the same youth that went to the Sundance. So we went to the pipe ceremony and the horse dance. And they were invited in to smoke the pipe. The boys were, and we sat there. And the girl was full of questions. She had no ribbon skirt. We didn't have ribbon shirts, but we were there. We were present. We met Patrick Buffalo there, and that was a huge turning point for me in my own life. Patrick Buffalo of Muskeg Tea and his healing horses, his equine assisted learning program. When the horse dance was over, you walk around in the trail left by the horses. It's to pick up healing medicine, so to speak. We thanked Patrick, and we told him we were grateful for having us there, and that these kids never went to anything like this before. He says, "Well, meet me tomorrow at Grant McEwen. I got something for you." Because I had told him I've been all over Indian country, and I can't find something that helps. When I teach my staff and I teach the older youth about Indian residential school experience, I talk about myself being sexually abused as a young child around age 7, and all the violence I went through. That really messed me up. At 12 years old, I tried to take my own life, and my mom didn't know that until this past summer. We're sitting at the table, and I was telling our guests after the sweat lodge. I told them what I went through as a boy, being raped, and I got beaten from an adult who was supposed to be one of my safe spaces, an older aunt, and I got beaten up in a restaurant bathroom and told never to say anything. I couldn't fathom what was going on, so I walked down the hill, and I took some twine from a big round bale, because my dad had horses, and I climbed in a tree, and I tied myself off, and I jumped out of the tree, and that branch just snapped. I landed on my back, and then it just hit me right on top of the head, boom, and I was like, wow. I took that rope off, and I ran up the hill. I was crying, and I never said nothing to anybody. My dad was always working. My mom was running the farm. We were helping on the farm. And plus my mom worked 2 jobs to keep us in hockey, keep us in basketball, rodeo, whatever, and school. And so when I tell my story, and I talk about Indian residential school in my training classes, and I talk about my own experience, lived experience, it triggers people. I was finding that people were getting upset. They were crying. They'd get up and they'd run out, and it really bothered me. I prayed about it and I thought about it. I didn't want to do that to people without having a way to help them. I didn't want to open up and not know how to put them back together, so to speak. I thought it was unfair. So I searched all over Indian country. I went through Treaty 6, I went through Treaty 7 and 8, I went to the Métis communities, visiting elders and talking. I went to Saskatchewan, all while I worked. and while I ceremonied on my own time, plus helping raise my nephew, our grandsons. So I was very busy. And that's when I discovered Patrick at that horse dance. And so I met him at Grant McEwen, and he talked about equine assisted learning or healing with horses. And he said, come out, come out and experience it for yourself. Bring your students, bring your staff. And so I didn't want to bring students yet. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I was walking into, but it just kind of felt right. And so I had to do Aboriginal awareness training for 34 staff. So I set it up at Patrick's. We put a teepee up, we brought out some food, and Patrick greeted us and did his program. And all 34 of us went through his program for 2 days. It was wonderful. It was remarkable. And even myself, it felt, honestly, when I was doing the healing with horses, and I was dealing with my sadness from age 7, because he uses his aura meter to figure out what your blockage is. And so it was at age 7, whatever I went through created a blockage of sadness. So I had to let that go. And so he places my hands and I put him on top of the horse's side, and he prays and creates to this horse, right? And it's just like when we lost our niece, Tony, it was so hard on the family and the community, and it basically killed us, broke our hearts. But when I was standing on the horse, that's how I felt when I stood over her casket to say my final goodbye, that I felt like I was saying goodbye. And he was asking the spirit of the horse to work through me and remove that blockage of sadness. And I felt it, and I felt something in me change, and I felt it was remarkable. And everybody that was there had something, I think I want to call it life-changing. And so we moved forward from there. And so I started bringing the staff, and I started bringing the youth out to Patrick's. We started going to sweat lodges more. We started picking sage and sweetgrass. We started doing rattle making. We went to Ben Calf Robe. That was a really good resource for us, and some other Native Friendship Center in Edmonton. And then just trying to create a program of land-based teaching, right? We grew up on the land. My dad was a trapper and a hunter. He was a farmer. He was a rancher, and he always went back to the land. Everything started and ended with the land. And so through those experiences and teaching our staff, it showed me that teaching was important. Taking the kids back to the water and healing the water inside each and every one of us, right? Removing blockages of anger, sadness, and fear. And so my program at these group homes was going really well, I felt. But I also felt that we were dealing with racism there, right? There was a general meeting, and on the agenda it said that staff could become part owners in the company. And I thought, that's exciting. I wanted to own my group home, but at this meeting they told us, well, you can become a part owner or buy shares, but you have to work here 10 years and you have to be a manager. And so I was just like deflated. It was kind of disheartening. So I went on my way, but I decided, why don't I open my own group home? So I started writing when I had time. I started creating ideas in my head, and I drafted this one business plan, and I called it Ogamawatik, which means the Sundance pole or the king of the poles, or the Sundance pole in the Sundance. Right? And I thought, too sacred, right? So I kept writing, drafting some policies, and coming up with ideas and pamphlets, and just trying to figure something out while I kept working. And then something happened. I got asked to go to the Edmonton Youth Assessment Center, and there was this boy there, and he wasn't really big, maybe about my height, but he was kind of lanky. He came from foster care and group care, and he came from street, and so he had a lot of assaults. He had some drug stuff on there, his charges and whatnot. And so we went and interviewed him, and ultimately we screened him out, right? We put a big X on the bottom and said no. And that just hurt me. Like, my parents fostered kids for many years, right? Many kids. And that just hurt me. Like, why are we screening them out? Why are we saying no to him? This is the guy that needs that help. And so this went on. We'd get calls, applications from youth, and it was always the same thing. If they dealt with drugs, if they dealt with alcohol, addiction, or street, everyone said no. And so as a society of group homes or foster care, we were creating a demographic of unhoused youth, right? And I was realizing, man, we're setting up these kids for failure, and we should be setting them up for success, right? And so that was inside here. That planted inside my heart. And so a couple weeks later, I went to one of the group homes, all-male group home, and I picked up all the youth. And they called these kids the bad kids. They called this the bad house. Nobody wants to work with them. They're disrespectful, right? They don't listen. They're always swearing. They're always trying to fight. All these things, all these reasons of why nobody wanted to work with them. And I said, we're going to a feast out in Muskeg Tea. We're going to go and smoke the pipe with the elder. He's doing a tobacco tie, and he wants us, and we're going to have a feast. So we'll stay there. And they're like, what's a tobacco tie? What's a feast? And all this, right? And I said, well, you'll see. You'll participate. But you got to be on your behavior. We can't go disrespecting the old man. And so we went to Samson, 4 Mile, to Leonard Saddleback's for the tobacco tie, preparing for the Sundance. And there was singing. And one of the boys asked, can I drum? He was Dene. Can I sing with them? I said, yeah, ask. So he did. And he was just standing there drumming, learning this song. And then when it was all said and done, it was time for the feast. And the boys said, can we help? Sure, go help. So they started helping. They started serving. They were going backwards. They were knocking their ladles on the soup, and soup was flying, and food was hitting the ground. It was kind of a chaotic thing, but they were learning. And the elder stood up, and he stopped everybody. Took the muck. He called for attention. And he looked right at me, and he goes, these are your boys. These are your sons. It's not for me to get up here and teach these boys how to be Iskwew in the ceremony. It's not my job. That's your job. Come up here and teach them. So I got up. I just shrunk. I went up there and I started teaching the boys how to go take a soup to the 4 directions, how to serve the soup and how to serve the bannock, and how to walk around carefully, how to be gentle, how to serve. I said, don't ask anybody if they want something. Your role is just to serve. Serve out the food, serve out the bannock, the bananas, whatever. And be gentle. Don't rush. And kneel when you're serving people. So we did that. And when we were all done, the boys were just beaming. And they went outside and they were playing outside. And I told the old man after, I said, these are the boys they call disrespectful, all the staff. These are the boys that no one wants to work with. I said, and here they didn't swear once. Here they didn't argue. They didn't fight. They just listened. Even when you scolded us or me, they just listened. Honestly, I thought they were going to tell him to F off, right? And then he says to me, well, they fit in. Here they know who they are. And just like that, the boys walked in. And they asked the elder, Mushab, is there anything else that you need us to do before we go home to the group home? And he turns around and he points. You see that red truck over there with all the firewood? Can you stack it up beside the house? And they said, yeah. And they took off and they were piling up this wood and stacking it up. And they came in and we gave him water. And then they shook his hand. And they thanked him and they went out to the van to wait for me. Man, it just blew my mind. And that's when it hit me that we need to put the Indian back into the child, right? We need to help create identity. We need to help create pride. Because even though myself as a policeman, growing up in high school and junior high and being in politics or being in oil and gas, I dealt with racism, right? Every day, still today. But I've developed thick skin when I pray about it and I try not to let it get to me. But I felt so good. And I felt so proud of these boys. I thought, this is what it is. You know, it's to teach these boys about the land. It's to teach these boys about culture. It's to teach these boys about ceremony, how to be an Iskwew. The Oki Center, Okisikow Iskwew, depends who's translating for you. It could be a strong woman, or it could be the most sacred woman, however you use that word. And so we talked lots. We had so many meetings talking about this idea I had for creating this program. Anyways, I got a meeting with Frog Lake First Nations to pitch our partnership and to pitch an idea to bring a group home healing center to the community. Because in the community, they gave me tobacco at a powwow, and it's almost 6 years ago now. And they asked me to speak, and we were losing youth. Honestly, we must have lost about 50 people, maybe 60. To overdose, to suicide. And it was just like 1 or 2 a week. Our sister nations were going through the same thing and everyone was feeling, like we couldn't do anything. We were feeling hopeless. And I spoke about that in the powwow, that we need to do something as parents, as uncles, as dads, as grandparents. We can't wait for leadership. We can't wait for them to do something. We have to do something. We even know who all the drug dealers are, but we're afraid of repercussions. Let's build a youth treatment center, right? We'll build a group home and provide land-based teaching. And the more we talked about land-based teaching, the more we talked about ceremony, it started to become something else. I was so excited. I was walking on cloud nine. I went to Sweat Lodge with my elder and Muskeg Tea, Rick Lightning, and I was just feeling good. Frog Lake had these COVID trailers from the government of Canada, and so I went to inspect these trailers, and they were rebuilding them. And so the guy starts talking to me, and he says, "Well, what do you need these camps for? What are you building? A work camp?" I said, "No, no, no. We're trying to build a youth treatment center in our nation. And we're trying to build a treatment program to help our youth. We're just losing youth left and right." And I said, I think we lost about 50 or 60 youth and young adults in the last year alone. We've lost 23 houses to fire and maybe a quarter of them to meth house or drug use. Anyways, he went in the office. He says, "Give me a minute." And he comes out and then he says to me, "I like what you're doing and I like your passion." He says, "How about this? I'll renovate them the way you want. I'll deliver them to you. I'll set them up for you. All in 197,000. I was like, "What? You can't do that, man. You'll be out profit." And he goes, "No, no. I really like what you're doing." And again, I cried, right? And then so we set up the deal and we went back home and everybody celebrated. We had some council members with me checking out the trailers and it was kind of a little celebration there in Leduc. It felt kind of like a turning point. We went out to the nation. We met with some elders. We had a ceremony, and then our Sundance leader said we have to have a feast and a pipe ceremony before we break the ground. Right. So we did that. I took my grandsons with me. I took an elder, and we all went sat in the middle of this field. We picked the spot where it sits now, and we did a feast, and we did a pipe ceremony, and then they said, "Now you have permission to break the ground." And so I started driving around with this construction company, trying to figure out where we're going to get our gravel, how we're going to build this, because I had no clue for equipment and whatnot. The construction company guy comes over and he says, "Chief says you guys got a camp to set up." And I said, "Yeah, we're going to set a camp up right here in the middle of this field." And he says, "This is a good spot." He just looked around. "This is a nice spot. It's open. There's some water over there, close to the highway. Good spot." I told him, this is where my cookums land. Right where we're standing, I said, this spot where the stake is in the ground used to be the Sundance Arbor. Right over there used to be the horse dance area back in the 50s, right? Back before it was really outlawed. It was starting to come back. And so he started calculating what it was going to cost. And he comes back, he says, "You're going to be right around 88, 90, maybe 100 grand. I was like, holy smokes. And he goes, "How much money do you have?" I said, "I don't have that, but I'll try and raise it." And he says, "Okay, I'll get the crew ready." And then he started walking away and then he turns around and he goes, "By the way, what are you building this for?" And I said, "I'm trying to build a youth treatment center because we're losing our youth. We're losing our youth. They're dying. There's drugs. There's gangs." And he goes, "Wow." And he goes, "You know what? Tomorrow we'll start. No charge." Oh, I'm a little emotional. And I was like, "What? You can't do that, man. That's big." And he said, "No, I think what you're doing is great. We'll set up the trailers for you, no charge." I was like just amazed. Everything that I needed was coming, even though the bank said no. And so we set up the program, we set up the trailers, and everything was looking good. We had a little bit of money. We talked to the bank, we signed on a dotted line, and I gave 50% of the company to Frog Lake, and we registered the company. And the bank gave us money to start. I think it was 350 grand. And we started buying beds and putting in washer and dryer and tables and buying computers. And the director and I were working together to get it going. I started getting my security to protect the building at nights. So they'd walk through the building, they'd check on it and have lunch there, whatever, supper in the middle of the night. Meanwhile, we're also working on the soil rig, trying to make money, keep afloat. So for 18 months, we looked after that building. It just sat there, right? There was no money coming in, and we were depleting our resources. Frog Lake and I were putting money in to keep it afloat, pay some bills. I had presented this idea shortly after COVID to then Minister Rick Wilson, Indigenous minister, and we sat there for hours. He told me, take this to your MLA, get it across his desk and get it to my office, and we'll see what we can do." And so back and forth with the province, back and forth. It took so long. We finally got an audience with the province. We finally sat down with them. They talked about it. They said, "What's your ask?" I said, $4 million. We need $4 million over 3 years. That'll help us to get started because it takes 3 years for any business to get off the ground, right? And then they thanked us for the meeting, and then that was it. We didn't hear from them for a while, and then we got a call. It was out of the blue. We were working on the center, cleaning it up and doing some repairs, and then the minister's office called us and invited to us to a meeting. But in the background, I want to send out a shout to Chief Cody Thomas up in Enoch. He was prolific in getting us an audience there with the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. He really pushed that envelope for us, and he was there along with our chief and our staff. And we met with the minister. It was really good. And he said, "Well, I don't think I have 4 million, but I have 996,000. I'm going to commit to you today." And it's like, wow. Wow, that'll get us going. So we took a picture, then we shook the hands, and then so now we went back to the nation. We had to do some things before the money would flow, right? We had to get a health inspector in, a fire inspector in. We had to get a licensing inspector in, and so we started that process, and then our policies. And so my bro out in Vancouver, Tyler Craig, shout out to Tyler. I was stuck. My director left. It was just me, and I was like, man, what am I going to do? I got this deal on the table, and the province has tentatively agreed, and I have to meet certain things. And so I was stuck. I was just stuck. I really did not know where to go. And I put some tobacco down, and I asked Creator to help. And my phone rings. Honestly, my phone just rings. I'm sitting in the truck, and it's Tyler. And Tyler's in White Rock, BC. Smart, very educated, very smart. And we were talking, and then I was telling him my dilemma, and he goes, I really don't know. I don't know anybody that could help you. And I said, wait a minute, Tyler. I said, what about you? I said, you're smart. You do policy. You develop policy. You work with treatment centers. So I said, Tyler, why don't you work for me? He goes, well, I'm already working. I said, well, do a side hustle. I said, I'll send you everything that I'm working on, my policies and everything that we need to do for licensing. So we met with licensing. We worked through November, December, banging out policy, doing inspections, hiring staff, doing interviews through Christmas, through New Year's. And we got the license approved on January 15th, and we opened on February 3rd. And by February 10th, we had our first clients, and it was amazing. It was not without adversity. I mean, a few people tried to stop the program. A few people speak out about it publicly on social media, making all kinds of claims. But I was so happy. 3 months later, 7 women graduated who are still clean today. They went to ceremony, and they went duck hunting and medicine picking. They went to night lodge. They went to women's lodge. Our clients went to Sundance and made their own dress, right? And so one of the things an elder had told me before when I was thinking about quitting, his name is Jeff Brightnose. Was not really an elder. He's my brother, sort of kind of through ceremony. He said it's important. Land-based teaching is the foundation of bringing our language back, bringing our culture back, and bringing the kids' water back to the community, right? Because we're all water, and so we need to honor their water. And that made so much sense to me. Now we're on our second set of clients. I think we have 7 clients who'll be graduating in a couple months. We have a waiting list for our next group. It's awesome. I went to the treatment center last week and I sweat with the youth there. And now we're planning a buffalo hunt. So the youth are going to go with hunters. They're going to harvest a buffalo. They're going to learn to field dress it, and they're going to pack it up for the elders. We're going to make dry meat and smoked fish. They went picking sweetgrass last week and sage the week before. And they've been going to sweats in the community. And it's just amazing. I think land-based teaching is absolutely where it's at.
First of all, I want to say what a powerful intro. Like, I really felt that. And honestly, you're doing amazing work. And especially with all the triumphs and challenges that you've already shared, like, it's so intense. You did mention a little bit about the name Okisikow Iskwew. What does that name mean for you? And why was it chosen for the center?
Well, it's to honor women, right? The water carriers. In ceremony, we talk a lot about honoring women. We splash the rocks and we pray and we talk about honoring women in ceremony, Sundance and whatnot. But I find a lot of time as men, we don't really walk that walk. who abuse our wives, who abuse our children. We drink and we drug, we hit them. I love my mom. My mom is 80, is 72. And if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't be here. She kept us in school. Even when I quit and ran away to Edmonton, she come found me and brought me back, kept me back in school, took us to sports. And she'd wake up at 5 in the morning, make fire, or 4. Wake up at 4 in the morning, make a fire, go out, milk the cow, come inside, make breakfast, stoke the fire, get us dressed for school, and get us ready for the bus. And we'd go to school and she'd go to one of her 2 jobs after she fed the cows. And every day she did that. And every day she went to bed at midnight. And between my mom, my sisters, my cookum, my daughters, my brother's daughters, I see it. I mean, we have our struggles, we have our differences sometimes, but when we lost our dad, he passed away in our arms, and my mom and I were holding him. The day before he passed away, Mom wanted to sweat, so we had a sweat lodge while her husband was laying in the hospital bed close to passing away. She was sitting in a sweat lodge down the hill there, praying for him, praying for people and singing. That's powerful. After Dad passed away, it was hard, It was really hard. But my mother was always there, always being strong for us, telling us to keep going and not to quit. And so I guess I want to say it's named after all women, to honor them. It's named after our daughters, to honor them. Okisikow Iskwew. We wouldn't be here without women. And we just can't say that. We have to mean it. We can't honor just women in a ribbon skirt. My friend Amanda taught me that. We have to honor all women. Women on the street, women that are stuck in addiction, women that are stuck in prostitution or in jails or sick or mental health. It's a little bit of all the strong women in my family, in our community. It's a little bit about my chapan, my dad's grandma. She lost her sight. She lived to be 101. She would walk from Moose Lake or Wolf Lake with my dad. My dad was 5 and she couldn't see. My dad was her eyes and ears. And they walked to Saddle Lake to go to Sundance. And that takes maybe an hour and a half from where they lived by vehicle today. So it took her days and days to get there. That's commitment. And she Sundanced for 41 years, even though she couldn't see. That's just amazing. So there's some pretty powerful, strong, humble women in our line. My mom's mom, Mary Louise Cross, she was strong. She was funny, right? Every once in a while she'd let her guard down and let her humor out, but she was strong, firm, fair. She raised all her grandkids when her daughters passed away because of addiction. I seen that. And so Okisikow Iskwew Center, it's about strong women looking after us. We honor them. And all these children that come to us, we're their family. We're their aunts and their uncles while they're with us. That's how we teach them when they're with us. Call us uncle, call us auntie, call us mushum. We don't use names. I hope that makes sense.
Let's talk a little bit about the center and its approach. What makes Oki different from other youth treatment centers?
Well, we're heavily culturally based. Many centers have a educational component in it, and it's 80% education, 20% culture. And this treatment center is a foundation, is all about culture, right? Severance taken teachings that we utilize. It's ingrained in the way we teach, and it's ingrained in the way our policy is written, our mission statement, to provide culturally appropriate care to kids in care. It's that simple. And then the other thing is we're the only treatment center in Canada with a curriculum which is called Stepping on the Stones, and it's based on the 12-step program, but it isn't the 12-step program. It's a book that was written by Joanna Johnson. She went through a really, really difficult life with addiction too. She's been there, and she wrote this book called Stepping on the Stones. I bought the program, and I brought it back to Canada. We also brought a program called He Said He Was Sorry, which is about domestic violence. And a lot of our youth, they see that. They see that growing up. We see that growing up. I never seen my mom and dad drink. I never see my mom and dad fight or my dad hit my mom ever. But he did get violent with us. Like he sometimes used his dad's corporal punishment, which didn't go over well. But when we went to my cookums in Frog Lake, it was like walking through a minefield of addiction, violence, drugs. So the Christmas time was unpredictable. We hid under beds. We hated going home sometimes because you didn't know what you're going to get, right? A lot of alcoholism and violence. So the Stepping on the Stones, we teach the domestic violence. We teach about breaking in and laws. We teach about bullying. We teach about cyber violence. We teach about being self-aware and being confident. And they have cultural Thursdays, and then they have sweat lodges on the weekend. Everything we do is culturally based. Everything. We bring in the elders to sit with us. They come and teach. It's a learning process. It's the first for us here in Frog Lake. The staff are trained in this field. People find out you have to really be committed, or really affects your family life sometimes when you're dealing with youth and addiction. It's very hard being a frontline worker. It messes with your mental health. It messes with your heart. Kids are suffering and you're trying to build trust. And one of the most important things my mom taught me when we'd get in trouble, when we come home late, we lost a brother to a car accident. So if we went out late, my mom would sit up till we got home. But she never yelled at us. She never gave us heck in the middle of the night. She never did that. She'd say, there's food in the fridge. If you want to eat something, go to bed. Don't make noise. We'll talk about it tomorrow. But the next day, man, Dad would work us in the field hauling bales or working with the cows or something, right? We paid that way. And so my mother never yelled at us. Yelling never helped when it came to struggling. What I did find was our parents, they never talked about emotion. They never said, I love you to us as adults or young men. Maybe my dad did when we were kids. So we're trying to instill that kind of trauma-informed care based on our language, culture, and ceremony into the work we do. So our program changes. Our program morphs a little bit, but we have those two foundational programs, Stepping on the Stones, and He Said He Was Sorry. We brought up Joanna Johnson and her team to Frog Lake, and they trained our staff. They worked with them, helped us build some more policy. That was important. And so our director now, Cheyenne, she's phenomenal. She is so phenomenal. She's a godsend. She really is. And she works so hard. And she's so connected to the youth, and she's so connected to the staff, and she's so smart. When we prayed in the sweat lodge, that's who the Creator sent to us. We put together a hiring team, and they go through all the resumes. They screen them out. And so they gave me 2 names, and they said, I think Cheyenne's the one. I drove across the province. To go and meet with her. And man, when I first met her and she started talking, I knew right away that she was the one. And we hired her, and she just hit the ground running, man. She just came out full tilt, and it started getting things organized. And by February 3rd, we're licensed. Everything was so down to the wire, but she got it done and got us open. And so the programs changes. She recommends changes. So it fluctuates a little bit to meet the needs of the clients, because we're dealing with clients that are coming from heavy addiction with meth or heroin or booze or whatever. And so we really got to meet them on their level. My mom told me one time they used to have culture camps here, that all culture camps should be held in front of a refrigerator, because that's the first place kids look when they go to someone's house, because they're usually hungry. They'll open the fridge and they'll see what's in there and maybe take something to eat, right? And that's the reality. We're dealing with a lot of hungry kids. So we nourish them and we feed them. The first week is just them climatizing and getting used to the surroundings. They may participate in the sweat. They don't have to, but they're resting, they're sleeping, they're eating, they're drinking water, they're hydrating, they're drinking not the Wapogan tea, and they're smudging each day. And then the second week, the third week is when they really start. And so I don't know if we're really, really different, but our programs are different, and everything that we do comes from our Naheo language, right? Our Cree language. And we're planning a moose hunt with the clients. I don't know if treatment centers do that, but that's what we're doing. We're going to the bush.
That is so cool. I actually attended a sweat ceremony in Frog Lake at Suzanne Quinney's back in April, and I believe some of the guests at Oki attended her sweat.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. What other type of ceremonies are part of the youth stay at Oki?
Okay. Well, Suzanne, she's remarkable. I mean, she has the songs and she has the language and she has the ceremony. And so when our youth went there and sweat with her, it was powerful. It was like coming home to their cookum or their auntie, or maybe even their mom. And she's firm and she's fair, but she's funny, and she provides that presence of a strong woman, Okisikow Iskwew, that we need. For some of the girls, They all grew up in care, or they grew up in street, or they grew up in a dysfunctional home. Going to Susan's, we approached her. She's going to do a woman's moon lodge for us for the next cycle of women. And I think that's fantastic. So it just kind of, our program follows the cultural calendar. There's going to be the soups or the singings for the Sundance that come up starting in February, March, April, May, June, or whatever. The Sundance, the horse dance, the chicken dance, the tea dance, the ghost dance, all these things. But I feel one of the most important things that we did was we brought our elder Moise Paul and we protocoled him and we talked. These kids need Cree names. And so we had a sweat lodge. And they're 14, 18, 21, 24, and they don't have a Cree name. And so he comes sweat with us with these young women. And each one of them received a name and ceremony. It was powerful. And it was kind of, I want to say, ironic. Each name that he gave these women, it actually meant something special to them in their life. Like he named this one girl Morning Robin or something like that. And she goes, my mom's name was Robin, right? And it's like, how does he know that stuff? The Spirit is working, the Creator is working through our elders and us to help these kids. I believe that. And I think it's up to us as community members to bring as much support to these kids as we can. We make mistakes along the way. We don't know it all. And we reach out to people that advise us. But the ceremonies and the language is very important.
Can you share what a typical day might look like for a young person in the program?
Yep, for sure. When they're settled in, when they're past that first week of recovery and eating nourishment, getting good food, getting some support and climatizing, the morning is about getting them ready, getting them cleaned up, to get showered up. They might brush their teeth, and it takes a little while. Some of them need some more support than others to get ready, right? It's a new environment. It's not something that a lot of us had growing up. If we're stuck in a difficult environment, nobody's there telling us to brush our teeth. Nobody's there telling us to wash our hair. Maybe we're cleaning up beer bottles and cleaning up the house that's wrecked from a party the night before. So all our staff are supportive. They have a morning smudge, then they have breakfast, and then they start their programming, which I don't know if it ever starts at 10 a.m. At 10 a.m. is when we start. Sometimes it starts at 10:15, Indian time. But we base the work on what they need at that particular time. They go through the workbook, the Stepping on the Stones workbook, and it's a lot of self-reflection and ask questions. And so you got to answer honestly, right, to keep moving forward. So each page, it realistically should take a person about a year to do the book. But sometimes we motor through it because we're just building this program. And sometimes it changes with our needs change. Then they'll take a break. They might need a health break. Then they'll have lunch, and some might help with the lunch and serve it and set it up. And then they come back to class, and they do the second half of the day, which is the He Said He Was Sorry, so the domestic violence program. They might get some homework. So there's a lot of time for them to do some self-reflection with these questions. And they have recreation night. They might go swimming in Lloydminster. Or they might go down to the Frog Lake Gymnasium and play volleyball. They might go to the Frog Lake Gymnasium and work out in the gym there. They have a really nice gym. Or they might play basketball outside. Frog Lake, Wisconsin, the company, they donated us a basketball court and basketballs and a basketball net. That was pretty awesome. So they go to recreation, and then they come back, and they may talk to a counselor, do some one-on-one, and then have supper or have some movie night. We have a great big TV in there and these great big comfy recliners. There's like 9 of them. And so they just lay back there and watch some TV. I think we might have bought a PS5. I don't know. I got to check. But anything we can do to keep them engaged, right? That's the simplest way I can describe Okisikow Iskwew Center, right? Even though it's built in 6 trailers and all the beds are in there, we try and make it homey. We try and make it lovable and livable. Everybody that has a milestone, we celebrate. We celebrated with the naming ceremony. We celebrated with the birthday. We celebrated when somebody graduated. And I'll tell you what, if you want to see a youth or a kid uncomfortable, you tell them how great and how proud you are of them, and how much you love them. And they will squirm in their chair and they'll sink in their chair. And because a lot of us growing up didn't hear that sort of thing, right? We didn't hear the I love yous and I'm proud of you. And in my dad's family, the cowboys there, the men didn't talk like that. I was 51 years old. We were sitting in a sweat lodge with my brother and for my dad's birthday. He turned 89. And my other brother was bringing in the rocks. My mom was sitting across from us. My sisters were getting ready. And my dad lifted up the pipe. And he started to pray and he stopped. He put the pipe down and he looked at us. He just looked at us sitting there and he goes, I just want you boys to know that I love you very much. I want you girls to know that I love you very much. And I'm proud of you. No matter what you do in life, anything that you choose to do, I'm so proud of you. And then he said, I'm just preparing you, right? Then he lifted the pipe and we looked at each other. We're just looking, what just happened? Dad never spoke like that. He lifted the pipe and we finished the sweat lodge and he splashed 89 times plus one for his birthday and we had cake and supper. And then about 13 days later, he got cold while working in the garden. He got sick and then they took him to hospital. He ended up passing away 28 days after he told us that I love you boys. I love you girls. I don't want to go through a day of my life without telling my daughter and my sons that. Even when we're having disagreements as families, me and my children, I want them to know that I love them. I want my grandkids to know that I love them. And these kids, they're our kids. For 90 days, they're our kids. We need to show them love. We need to show them kindness and compassion. But we need to show them they matter. We all matter. You matter. Your children matter.
For real, that's such a powerful reminder for our youth. And what kind of transformations have you witnessed in the youth who come through the center?
Well, you need to know that some of them come from pretty difficult backgrounds, right? Whether it's EYOC or jail or street or broken homes. I really don't like that term broken homes, but that's the reality. Foster care, group care, typical shy girls, when they first get there, don't want to talk too much. So you got to be gentle. You can't be a pushover though, right? These kids are master manipulators if you let them. They want to get their way. They want to do things their way. So they have to be taught boundaries. They have to be taught a certain amount of rules. One of our youth came from overdosing and living in care and might actually get adopted out by a community member because she's doing so well and keeping clean and keeping sober and following the ceremonies and following the language and following the elders and the youth that come doing land-based teaching, swimming out in the water to go collect ducks and being brave to try things like fishing or boating or riding a horse or going to ceremony, and to hear them laugh, to hear them joke. You're doing really well when they're teasing you.
Are there any particular moments or stories that stand out to you? Moments that affirm why this type of work matters?
There's plenty. I'm fond of all the kids, and for the youth coming from group care and going through the program and being defiant and really sometimes struggling with wanting to leave and every day saying, I'm going to quit, I'm going to leave, F this place, right? And so it's that little girl that's talking that was hurt a long time ago. If we refer to Patrick Buffalo's teachings about anger, sadness, and fear in the equine assisted learning, we know that our youth are hurting from something that they experience as children, not what they're going through right now. So we work with them in that sense. We take them to healing with horses and we work with them. And this one particular youth, it was her last day and she wanted to stay longer. Right? There was uncertainty where she was going to go, back to the group home, back to the street. And so she stayed 120 days. She stayed. And then she finally got placed with a family in Frog Lake that I don't want to say too much, but they've taken her in, right? Give her a home. She's doing really well. And so I went to the sweat lodge and I stopped at this gas station on the way on Yellowhead Highway. I was walking out and there was these big teddy bears on the top of this wall. They were like 2.5 feet tall, and there was some that were 18 inches, and there was like about 30 teddy bears. And why do I want teddy bears so bad, And so I bought 5 teddy bears. I put them in my truck, and I went to the lodge. And then the elder that was there, I said, give these to your granddaughters, even though her granddaughters are teens, and the elders' kids are still in school. Even though that they have social issues that they're dealing with. They're still in school, so I'm proud of them. So I sent them a gift. And then this girl, she showed up at a sweat lodge, and I was surprised to see her. She walked in, and she's like, hey, how you doing? And she gave me a hug. And I said, what are you up to? And she goes, oh, I come to sweat. I said, on your own? She goes, yeah. I said, wow, wow, come here, come here, come here. I said, come here. And I gave her a teddy bear. Right? And she just, oh my goodness, she was so filled with joy. She was so surprised because I've never had a teddy before. Is this real? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm so proud of you. And then she hugged me. She was just so grateful. We finished the sweat lodge and we went inside and we ate with the elder and she gave the elder a little gift that she made. And man, I felt like a proud dad, or a proud uncle or a Muslim even, because she's just a little older than my grandkids. But that's what we need is kindness and compassion. I mean, we all go through our own things. We all go through our own struggles and we crash and we burn and we have to get back up, continue moving forward. I was so super proud of her. Even the boys, like the new group that we have, they're willing to learn. They're full of questions. They're full of jokes and sometimes they tease and it's funny, but I'm just happy. I'm happy that it's working out for them. Even if they leave, like one girl quit. Her family came to visit and she quit. Like she couldn't resist leaving with her family. She's just like, I gotta go home. And her boyfriend was there and her mom. And we didn't try and talk her into it. We just said, we'll be here for you, And so they left. After 30 days, I told Cheyenne, I said, if her family or her calls you, you go get them. No questions asked. Because I find a lot of times in treatment centers, if you make a mistake, they kick you out and you can never come back for 2 years or something. You got to reapply and go through the whole process again. And I don't want to do that. My mom, she never closed the door on us, ever, never. In fact, her dad told her, don't argue or yell with your children when they're leaving, before they leave home. When that door closes, you may never, you won't know when you'll see them again. And so I told Cheyenne, man, if they call, you go get her. And 3-4 days later, her auntie calls and she says, my girl wants to come back. Is that okay? They were out the door, flying to Edmonton to go pick her up and bring her back, to get back into the program. And I think it's important for us to provide that safe space. If somebody wants to go to treatment, they should be able to go to treatment.
How do the youth respond to being immersed in culture and land-based healing?
Oh my goodness. Well, of course they're shy at first. They're trying to get used to the place, but the staff is usually pretty good at acclimatizing them and getting them involved and being a role model of participation. But I find they're ready to participate. Like they're eager to go when they go medicine picking. Try that with our teenagers today that are not struggling with addiction, right? Kids at home are on an iPad or iPhone and don't want to get involved, but they're hungry for knowledge. They're hungry for role models. They're hungry for teachings and identity, And some of them bring knowledge to us too. Like some of them talk about their family or how they do things and get involved like that. But I think, well, for the most part, they're open, they're eager. It was blistering hot and they went picking sweetgrass, right? And like the girls, they went duck hunting and they dove into water and went and got these ducks. Everything that we've put in front of them, they've been willing to participate and they've come out with, a really good learning experience, right? We got to keep the F-bombs down around the lodge, but for the most part, they're open to learning. It's like they're a sponge and we're just filling them with knowledge. And we're trying to give them tools how to express themselves. Because even us as adults, unless we're taught, we don't know how to speak. We don't know how to express ourselves. How many of us know how to say, I raised my voice there yesterday and I apologize. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, right? We've been taught to just be quiet about it. So that's what we're trying to do is put tools in their toolbox, something that they can take with them when they leave, and which is hard too. I approached the government of Alberta about building transition homes for these youth and letting them live in the trailers after they graduate, instead of letting them go home to community and just put them right back into the place they were experiencing social issues. That's what I wanted, this transition home for them to stay there for up to a year and then invite their family to come to the ceremony with them, to come learn with them on the land and to see that their kids are making great strides and to tell them, I'm proud of you. And I'm so happy. I don't think kids today hear a lot of that while they're struggling with addiction, right? And so we try to fill them up and be genuine though, right? We try to fill up their cup. And sometimes they We'll work with the staff to make bannock or cut up vegetables, serve food in the kitchen. I had a girl that was in a group home that was sold into sex slavery. And when she was in our group home, staff would get frustrated. Her room was a mess, or her dishes were piling up and her clothes weren't washed. So the staff were getting frustrated. And I would say, well, what makes us think they know how to do all that? Maybe nobody showed her how to clean her home. I mean, she was in slavery. How would she know? Right? So we have to show these kids how to do that. Show these kids life skills. How to separate the darks from the whites when we do our laundry, how to fold towels, how to clean carrots, how to boil potatoes, how to open a bank account. These simple things. So I think about the feast with our elder Mr. Saddleback back in 2015 when our kids were making mistakes as Oskapios, and he told me, he said, "These are your kids. I know they're not yours biologically, but when they're with you, they're yours. So it's your responsibility to teach them." And so that's what we bring into Okisikow Iskwew Center, into Oki, is while they're with us, we teach them how to cook, how to clean, how to look after themselves, how to wash their clothes, how to speak up for themselves, to have a voice. I feel, I need, I want, right? We got to show them how to express themselves. And we have to let them know that it's okay to be upset, right? We have to give them permission to express themselves, but in a good way. I'm upset. I'm mad. I'm angry. I'm hurt. And teach them how to do that without saying, "You made me mad," or "It's your fault I'm upset," right? So taking accountability for our actions. If we can help one youth, we help a family. We help a community. That's important.
That makes me think of community and relationships. How important is community involvement? That includes our elders and our knowledge keepers is in Oki's work.
Well, we try to coincide with everything that's going on. Orange Shirt Day, National Addictions Awareness, MMIW. These are the real things that these kids grow up with, right? And so when we work with the elders, we're out in community. We go to their lodges. We work with the youth and the staff, come up with this great idea of participating in the farmers market. So the youth are sewing, they're making dresses, they're making little beaded trinkets, they're making blueberry pies, and they're cooking, they're making money. And so they use this money to go to the movie, or they use this money to go to Boston Pizza, because who doesn't like Boston Pizza, right? Or they go swimming. They participated in community cleanup. They volunteered to clean up all around a band office and powwow grounds and stuff, and they ended up getting a donation for that. They got to spend it on whatever they wanted. And so the community is aware of them now more and more. It's just not these Oki kids, right? These are our kids. We can't say it takes a community to raise a child, not mean it. And so we have elders like Suzanne that you talked about earlier, Moise Paul and Melvin Abraham and Donald Cross and Laverne Faithful and Adrian and Yo-Yo and all these people that come to our lodge, and it's just full. Leadership comes to sweat with us. The chief comes to sweat with us. The council members come to sweat with us. The powwow bands come and sweat with us. Not the bands, but the groups like Northern Cree came and sat with us. And so we're weaving them into the fabric of the community. Even if they don't have a place when they leave with us, they can always come back, right? And that's what I want to have, a transition home in the community. We're reaching out to industry for that. We're reaching out to federal government to try and get them involved so we can create a safe space for these youth. I think the community is more welcoming. They were concerned before. There was concern raised that we're dealing with kids that are addicted to meth or heroin or booze or whatever, but we're surrounded by meth houses, and let's do something about the meth houses. Let's do something about the drugs in the community. And let's support these kids that want to participate. It's open to more than just First Nations youth. It's open to Métis youth, Inuit youth, non-Indigenous youth. The only requirement for them to come and get help is they have to be willing to participate. That's the only real requirement is the ability and the want to participate and creating that safe space for them. We were invited to 2 camps, and we had a real tough deciding, but they went to a culture camp with NADAP. The camp was at the lake, and they participated for 3 days, participating, Oskapios, enjoying themselves, visiting. And, the girls went to the Sundance. They went to participate there. They brought in their protocols. They were welcomed into the ceremony with the elders. from the community. And so they identify. We're putting the Indian back in the child, and that's important.
How do you and your staff stay grounded and supported given the intensity of this work?
That's a tough one. It's a tough one because sometimes you're dealing with the stressors of work. You're dealing with lateral violence on social media. You're dealing with the moccasin telegraph and rumor mill. And, no matter what you do, you could do a thousand amazing things. And if you make a mistake, people will jump on you, even if they don't have the full information. And it affects our staff, right? Or working front line with these youth, your heart just goes out to them. You feel sometimes helpless because you're trying to help them. You're trying to make a difference and you don't know if you are. We have some high turnover. Like, it's hard working front line. We have sweat lodges. We have an elder that comes in, and she comes and sits and smudges the staff, and she sits and counsels them, right? Because it's hard if you're married or you're in a relationship and you're gone to work all the time trying to help kids, and you got to come home and unpack that and try turn on this smile, but you're worrying about the kids back at the center. It's hard. So whatever we can do to provide some sense of support. Sweat lodge is the main thing. Elders is the main thing. And speaking openly inside the lodge, even when the youth are there. I think that's important, right? Talking about what we're experiencing as staff, talking about what we're experiencing as a human being, right? I struggled with my heart, and all of a sudden I'm dealing with cancer, and I'm just like, what the heck's going on? And so I spoke about it in the center, in the lodge, about where I'm at. I think if we can role model to the youth, even when we're struggling, and speak openly about it and honestly about it, that we're setting that example. It's not easy to talk about what we're going through. It's not. I can't find any adults that know, have it all together.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you and your team face in this work?
Funding. Funding is a huge one. Funding is one of the biggest hurdles that we face, and being competitive with other agencies as far as salary goes. Right? People come to work for us, but it's hard to turn down $35 an hour someplace else, and they leave, right? So funding is a big one. And being so far from communities, we're like a bedroom community. We have to go to work elsewhere, or we have to drive 45 minutes to an hour to town. And so it's hard to attract employees. We tried to get employee trailers, and then we tried to get a transition trailer for the youth, because the reality is we're in the middle of Frog Lake, and the closest town is 88 kilometers away. So that's been difficult. And sometimes team camaraderie takes a hit. So you really kind of got to jump on that right away and work with the staff and resolve any differences, or get some support for the staff, because we're all living life, right? And we're all trying to do this good work. At the same time, we're trying to raise our kids and get them in school and get them in sports. It's not easy. Sometimes there's just not enough time in a day, but we make it work.
What messages do you want young people listening to this podcast to hear, especially those who may be struggling right now?
A message to the youth. Well, I think about myself when I was a kid, when I was 7 years old and being abused, and I had nobody. I tried to turn to somebody to tell, and I got shut down. I got beat up. I got called down and put down. And then I wasn't believed, right? And nobody was there. There was no support. When I think about kids, teenagers that go through these things on the daily, I need them to know that there's help out there, at the Oki recovery or wherever. There's people out there that care. A lot of the kids, they tell us, you're just doing your job, man. It's just a job. And it is a job. It puts food on our table, but we're also helping. And I want them to know that we're here for them no matter what. Even if they leave, sometimes we have to terminate a residence because of behavior, or somebody brings in drugs. We tell them, when you're ready, we're here. Our door is always open. So just call us. If there's a bed, we'll put you in. The Oki recovery is there for all teenagers in Alberta, whether you're First Nations, Métis, Inuit, or non-Indigenous. And we're here to help. We're here for you. It just starts with wanting them to take that first step and pick up the phone and say, I'm ready. We're here. Cheyenne's here. The staff's here. We're ready.
So in closing, how can people help support the work of Oki or get involved?
Well, because we experience funding restraints, like it's hard. But like I reach out to community on social media. I've reached out and I've said, ISO ribbon skirts, ISO beading material, and people mail it to us. People have mailed us crafting supplies. People have mailed us ribbon dresses. People have donated their time at the sweat lodge. They want these kids to succeed. They want Oki recovery to succeed. And one of the things I learned when I met with the Alberta ministry was we're not very well known yet. We're so new that people don't even know we exist in parts of Alberta. So we had a media campaign and we had pamphlets and we were emailing people and putting up posters, but we need to do more. We need people that know about us to share a post and make it known that Oki Recovery is there for them, for the youth, to lobby their MLAs in their territories to get a youth treatment center. Because 4 years ago, when I met with the province of Alberta, I talked about a treatment center in High Level. I talked about a treatment center in Pekani. The program is the same. It's based on language, culture, and ceremony. So you could pick up this program and put it in High Level. The only difference is the language and the culture is a little bit different, but the program stays the same.
Okay, so final question. Is there a teaching, quote, or story you'd like to leave listeners with today?
I always refer back to my father for teachings, and a lot of the stuff I teach today is because of him or my mom or elders like mentors like Patrick or Bob Cardinal or somebody, but mostly it's about my dad. Many years ago, probably 1983, 84, we traveled to Frog Lake. I stayed behind with Dad. We worked in bales. We made bales while Mom and everyone else went to Frog Lake. We cut hay and we were making bales, and I was stacking bales for Dad. And we cleared the field off, went to bed, and early in the morning, we drove to Frog Lake. We got there, and the rocks were almost ready. Everyone was just preparing the final preps for the sweat lodge. And that's before cell phones. So we kind of made it just in time. My dad was the eldest. They come tobacco him and asked him to pray and lift the pipe and open the lodge. And so he went in, and I was outside by the door. All of a sudden, there was this huge commotion outside. You could hear people were yelling and raising voices. Everyone was saying things like, "You should have some respect. You should know better. Get the heck out of here. You shouldn't be here when you're drinking," and all these things. And it was a relative that came to the sweat lodge, but he was half cut. My dad said, "What's going on?" And they said, "He's here and he wants to sweat, but he's drunk. We're trying to tell him to go home." And then my dad said, "That's okay. That's okay. Come in, Stum." He said, "Nischas, sit beside me." He patted the ground. "Sit beside me. We'll smoke." So he come in. He took off his T-shirt and sat beside my dad, and he was wearing jeans. And my dad prayed, and it was quiet. They smoked, and they sang songs. They did all 4 rounds, and he thanked my dad and left. Fast forward to 2000, what is it now? Is it 25 right now? So about 2020, my dad and I were driving to Fort Mackay to go build a sweat lodge for the treatment center. While we were driving, I said, "Dad, you remember that time long ago when we went to the sweat lodge and Uncle was drunk, making a commotion, and everyone was trying to kick him out? Everyone says you have to be clean for 4 days before you sweat. You have to be clean 4 days." I said, "How come you let him come in the sweat lodge even though he had been drinking?" And he said, "This job I do, the sweat lodge, I try and help people when I pray. And when people ask me for help today, I can't sit there and say to the Creator's children, wait 4 days, come back in 4 days. I can't be responsible for that person if they harm themselves or even get killed. If they want help today, we need to help them today." And that just made so much sense to me. That's that humble cowboy logic that my dad had. Today, that man has been sober like 32 years. He runs a lodge. He fosters kids. He plays hockey, keeps kids in sports, takes kids to Native provincials. Man, prayer's powerful. That's just beautiful.
That is so amazing. I love that. That was really rich and a grounding conversation. I wanted to say thank you to our guest Marcel for sharing not only his knowledge but his heart. The work happening at Oki is a reminder that healing isn't just possible, it's already happening. It's rooted in our language, our land, and our ways. If you or someone you love is struggling, please know there is support out there. You're never alone. We'll have links and resources in the show notes, including how to connect with the Okisikow Iskwew
Wonderful.
Center and other Indigenous wellness programs. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow the podcast share with your kin, and leave us a review. You can also connect with me on social media at Muskeg Tea with Chantel G. I always love hearing your thoughts and reflections. Until next time, keep your spirit grounded, your tea warm, and your heart open. You're listening to Muskeg Tea with Chantel G. Hi, and take care.
That's good.